Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ian James, and I'm the Highways and Traffic Management Group Manager at Devon County Council. So big thank you, Rebecca, for welcoming us today and your time in making this event happen today. And also big thank you to everybody who has joined us online today and your commitment to these sessions. So this will be our 5th Connect event, and we have previously covered roles and responsibilities in the Highways team, DIY highways, how are our roads maintained, and highways in the planning system. So all these sessions have been recorded and are available through DALC. So if there are any sessions you're unable to attend or are new to your role, please do take the time to watch the recordings. So these events are hosted by DALC for the benefit of towns and parishes. Jointly with our colleagues at DALC, we are keen to make sure you're getting the right information you need to help serve your communities well. And for us to continue to grow our relationship and work along together. So the programme of Connect events is driven by yourself. Therefore, if there are any subjects or topics you would like to hear about, please let Rebecca and her colleagues at DALC know, and we will include them in future sessions. So we have 2 more events booked in after today. So Highway Investment Unveiled on the 2nd of September, where we will focus on how we use the resources available to us to manage the network. And also which is booked in for the 11th of November this year, which will focus on the work of our traffic team. So today's session is Understanding Roadworks. So the majority of what the travelling public see is the front end of those roadworks, so traffic cones, signs, delays, road closures, diversions, etc. And due to the nature, this is an area which causes a lot of contention. So today we will show you what happens behind the scenes and the mitigations we put in place and the complexities we face in keeping our network running whilst fulfilling our statutory duty as a local authority. So I'm really pleased to have some key people from the team here today to present to colleagues from statutory undertakers. So if I can have the first slide, please, Rebecca, and then I'll ask colleagues to unmute themselves and introduce themselves. Okay, Rob.
Afternoon, everyone. Rob Richards, I'm Deputy Director, Highways Infrastructure Development. So I cover all of the highway service, and I also look after our in-house design consultant that's delivering our large capital projects.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Richard Brown.
Good morning, Richard Brown. I'm the Network Operations Manager for Devon County Council. So look after sort of one half of the traffic management group, which includes our network operations support team, but also street lighting, traffic signals, network response team, and the network operations control centre.
Okay, Richard P.
Hi there, Richard Price. I'm the Network Operations Support Manager, managing the coordination and enforcement teams, as well as a portfolio regarding traffic management for events that take place on the highway.
Okay, Andy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, Andy next, and I'm the Network Enforcement Supervisor for Devon.
Karen.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Robson. I'm a Network Coordination Supervisor, and I look after South Hams and team.
Ray.
Good morning, Ray Haffron, Contracts Manager for South West Water. Role within the business is the interface between South West Water as an operational entity, both cleaning waste and our varied supply chain that support operations on behalf of South West Water.
So morning, everyone. Thanks for having us along this morning. The main topic today is going to be around roadworks and sort of how they're coordinated on the Devon network, the various sources, and also a lot of the legislation around that, which governs it, and how we sort of perform our network management duty, which is to sort of the expeditious movement of traffic. So a few things we're going to cover this morning. Done a few strategic updates already, but we're going to go and look at the network overview, just to sort of paint the picture of what sort of we're dealing with, looking around the team structure, where we sit within the organisation, and then sort of Rich Price is going to sort of pick up around the legislation, network coordination, how that's performed, the various sort of sources of works, the funding that we receive and how we use it, and also around the software, and also a few tools that people can use themselves to find out what's going on in their local area. We're also going to get a bit of a viewpoint from some of our sort of statutory undertakers. So South West Water, Ray's coming along to sort of have a sort of few minutes around that, and also a case study around some work that's been going on in the local area, which is replicated across the county. But we're just going to focus it in just to give an idea of how it all works together. It's focusing on some work around Newton Abbot, and then finally just look at a piece around enforcement and how we sort of tackle that. And then there'll be a chance for some questions for the DCC officers at the end. Move on to the next one, please. So just to sort of set the scene, I'm sure some of you probably have seen some of these details before, but Devon's network currently around 8,250 miles of road, which is the largest of any sort of local authority in the country. That's not including sort of the M5, A30 and A35, which is looked after by National Highways. Also some of the sort of unitary authorities such as Plymouth or Torbay. That said, we work very closely with those authorities around coordination of works and events to make sure that everything sort of works smoothly for the residents and the visitors of Devon as a whole. On top of that, we've also got around 80,000 street lights. So that's not including things like illuminated signs, got 3,000 bridges, and over 400 sort of signalised installations. So that's including things like junctions and signalised crossings, as well as a whole host of other things, cycle paths, public rights of way, and sort of all the furniture and everything that goes along with that. So it's quite key. You know, this is something that as residents and visitors of Devon we interact with every day, and it's key to the quality of life for residents. So coordination, it's a big exercise. And as well as the things on top of the network is all the bits and pieces that go underneath the network as well. So the services that are carried through the roads that deliver things like water, gas, all those essential services to the residents of Devon. Okay, let's move on. Thanks, Rebecca. So in terms of where we are in the organisation, so I think sort of Rob Richards sort of outlined sort of his part of the directorate, but you know we sit under the sort of wider Climate Change and Environment and Transport Directorate, which is headed up by Director Meg Booth. And then Ian James is a sort of head of highways and traffic management, and that leads down to Alex, who's carries the sort of the statutory function as a traffic manager within Devon, and that's laid out under in statutory. And then there's two halves of that sort of traffic management group. I sit on one half, which is the operations side, and that encompasses things such as the network response team, which look after the safety of the network, street lighting, traffic signals, a network operations control center, as well as the network operations support team, which Richard Price manages, all of which really feed into that network management duty and making sure that the sort of traffic moves around Devon effectively, efficiently, and safely as well. So that's sort of how we sit within the group. And there's a lot of other teams in there that you'll interact with, the neighbour teams and the asset management group, which we all key part of that as well. So I'm just going to hand over to Richard Price now, who manages a network operations support team, and he's going to go through some of the key elements of network coordination with you.
Thanks, Rich. Could you put the next slide up, please? So what you have there is the network operations support team, which kind of, if you attach that to the chart before, it kind of sits within Rich Brown's area of responsibility. It's quite a large team dealing with the network coordination and enforcement functions across the county. Okay, next slide, please. So Rich mentioned the network management duty, and that's contained within the Traffic Management Act, which was introduced back in 2004. And a key element of that is securing the expeditious movement of traffic on the authority's road network. One of the caveats around that is as far as practicable. Clearly, to secure that all of the time on every road on every occasion is a rather big ask. So there is a caveat there, which is as far as practicable. You can see some other elements of legislation there that we work with. The New Roads and Streetworks Act that basically defines the operations carried out on the network when street and road works are being done. the Road Traffic Regulation Act there, which is all about the traffic orders and the like, which are published in order to restrict access to or ensure that the highway is available for use by those undertaking works. And then the Highways Act 1980, which is around maintaining the highway itself. Okay, next slide, please. So I'm sure many of you are thinking, surely it must be a really simple process, just telling people where they can dig up the roads, when they can close them, and then put up traffic lights. It's not quite so straightforward. Obviously, we see congestion out there on the road, and I'm sure many people wondering how and why that actually happens. Well, hopefully over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, I may be able to enlighten you around that. Coordinating and managing road space may at first appear quite simple, but you can see there's a lot of works there, the logos of the various companies who work with, and that's just a snapshot. That's certainly not all of them. And having been involved in this for the last 10 years or so, it's certainly taught me that it isn't the easiest of exercises. The county council itself has the street authority in legislation, has certain responsibilities in law, but it also itself carries out its own work. So when the county council carries out works, it's called Roadworks. But when you see statutory undertakers, those that are providing services and supplies, when they're carrying out works, they're called street works, and there is a very definite difference between the two. But it is all managed by the county council. Most of the logos you see there on the slide are statutory undertakers. Now they perform works on the highway under a permit. Like I said, they provide utility supplies and services such as electricity, gas, water, communications. There are also utilities that undertake private works, and those works are under a license rather than a permit. And again, that's to provide services or supplies, and you can see logos there from E.ON and One Energy. Those two companies are providing district heating networks, like the one that One Energy is currently in the midst of providing in Exeter. One of the important elements that you can see there at the bottom left, relationships, you can see the word parity. It's an important element that the authority has, and that's to demonstrate a parity between the works promoters and the county council itself. So when we're undertaking our works, the way that's managed should be the same as the way it's managed with the statutory undertakers and private licensees. Now, in managing that activity, clearly there are different functions that are performed, but in essence, the authority itself is charged with ensuring that there is a level of parity. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of approaches to planning and networking for works, you can see listed there under planning a number of bodies. There's a national body, which is HAWK, which is the Highway Authority and Utility Companies Group, and that's into regions. So you can see there at the top, we've got the Southwest HAWK. That body meets regionally as well as nationally, and it comprises of representatives both from the street authorities and statutory undertakers, and they meet to resolve issues and discuss specific points. That body is fed into by the two that are sat below it. So you've got the JAG body, which is the Joint Authorities Group. Again, that's broken up into regional groups. And then you've got the Joint Utilities Group there. So the Joint Authorities, that's a group where all the authorities get together and meet. And the Utilities Group is where all the utilities get together and meet. So every 6 months, the County Council holds performance meetings with the 6 key utilities that submit the most permits to the authority, and that's to hold them to account on their performance, discuss various issues which are in need of resolution. The County Council also holds a coordination meeting every 6 months with all utilities submitting permits, and that meeting also has representatives from Devon County Council who promote our own roadworks. The benefit from getting everybody together is to try and exploit any opportunities there are to collaborate, so that we try and get perhaps utilities in with us when we're undertaking works, or vice versa. Sometimes that isn't always possible. Clearly, if you have perhaps gas working with electricity, putting those two together is not a good idea, and we don't clearly encourage that. But some utilities are able to work with others, and we look to try and encourage that wherever possible. On the right there, you see the diagram. So what we have is Devon County there in the middle. And we link in, as was mentioned before, with our neighbouring authorities, but that also includes National Highways, Network Rail, Environment Agency, all of whom raise permits to undertake operations or to divert traffic sometimes onto our network. Okay, next slide, please. So what are permits? There are various types, as you can see there on the slide. They're all classified depending on the nature of the works to be undertaken. Any works with a road closure, irrespective of its duration, is always classed as major works, and that requires 3 months advance notice. You see there major, standard, minor. These are all classified for pre-planned activity. Where the works are reactive, then it is classed as immediate works, and there are two different types of immediate works. It's either urgent or emergency. So the emergency side is for works which can involve damage or danger, such as a gas escape. Immediate urgent works are where there is a loss of or interruption to a utility supply or service, such as a communications outage or a water leak. There are not only tasks managed. The permits can be subject of change requests, so it's not just processing the permits themselves. Once they're in, have been approved, then requests can come in to vary the dates, to extend the dates, vary the traffic management. All of those require assessment, re-coordinating sometimes to make sure that there's not going to be a clash, and they can either be approved or rejected. In addition, the overall duration of works on the permit can be subject to what's called a duration challenge, if there's a good rationale to do so, and a utility can either reject or accept that challenge. And we do, at times, when we look at the duration of some works, we do challenge those durations, seek a better rationale for why perhaps it's taking as long as it is. Roads across the county have assessed levels of traffic sensitivity. And that's based on a set legal criteria. This will influence when works can take place, and perhaps in some occasions some additional mitigation measures that might be required, such as if traffic lights are being put up at a traffic sensitive time, then we'll require them to be manually controlled to be a bit more responsive to traffic flows. Okay, next slide, please. So you can see this is a flow chart. Which basically takes you through how assessments are done as to what type of permit is required for what particular type of works. Basically just showing the flow, very much as I've explained, but with certain durations there indicating what permits are required. Okay, next slide, please. This was a slightly more complicated one, which is focusing on major works, which if major works are required with a road closure, then the promoter will obtain what's called a PAA, a provisional advanced authorization from the street authority 3 months ahead of requiring that road closure. So once the PAA comes in, there's an assessment done ahead of the permit application itself coming in for those works. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we're now into the realm of advance notice for works which are taking place on the network. If there are no road closures, it's for the works promoter to consider who they inform in advance of those works being undertaken. With road closures where a T2O must be applied for, there's a requirement to notify and consult, and the level of that consultation is shown on the guidance notes on the County Council's website, identifying a number of set requirements. I won't go through the whole details here, but you can see there the statutory consultees, which are managed by the County Council, the emergency services, buses, stagecoach, the elected members in an area, and the local councils. The works promoter needs to make sure that they consult or notify those who are most likely to be affected by the closure. That clearly doesn't mean every person who may encounter the closed road or every single person in a town or a village, but you can see those listed there. The ones that we expect in the application to be identified are businesses and schools nearby, residents who are within the closure, and then any community facilities that might be within the closed area, local independent bus services, and the town and parish councils. Next slide, please. One of the questions often asked is around the difference between the notification of works and consultation around that. Most utilities understand there's a legal requirement to notify, and often this is signs which are placed on the road network at least 7 days in advance of that closure happening. Other process that can be done includes letter drops, and the County Council may, when it's viable to do so, use its variable message signing, social media, to make sure that the information is widely available to the public. If a notification letter is sent to a resident and that provides contact details for the promoter, it gives an opportunity for the recipient to respond. And that is in effect the consultation element that's taking place. It's important to understand that consultation is not so much about if or when the works are to take place. It's more about what may be needed to mitigate any problems which occur while those works are taking place. And that can be anything such as carers visits, deliveries, collections, parking and access arrangements to properties. It's important also to recognise that the statutory undertakers do have legal rights to lay, maintain, inspect, fix and remove their apparatus that is there in the highway. So we need to work with the utilities, seeking cooperation to make sure that they are able to access their apparatus, and for us to manage the network as best as possible while they do so. Okay, next slide, please. We'll now briefly look at how the permit scheme in the County Council is funded to recover the operating costs. But perhaps first we'll just have a look at the permits that are submitted to the County Council. The scheme itself was introduced in Devon in April 2020, and that was right obviously when COVID hit. It created immense challenges, moving to a system whereby we were dealing with significantly more applications to work on the network than we did with our previous noticing regime. And that also had to be aligned with a new national IT infrastructure process to deal with these applications. So you can see there in 2021 what the number was and how they rose across 22 and 23. We did see a decline in 2024 and likely to do so again in 25. And that's as a result of some adjustments that were made by the DFT to what types of works required a permit. And also a slight tailing off of the work being done by fibre providers in Devon. Okay, next slide, please. So the utilities pay a fee to the County Council for a permit, and that enables us to recover the operational costs. They're paid by the utility companies, and the fees do vary. The fee will be relative to the type of works permit requested and the type of road on which the works will take place. You'll recall I mentioned traffic sensitivity earlier, and this is where this is important in managing the network in terms of the fees that are paid by promoters to actually go onto the network. Okay, so we can see there obviously the types of works permit, the traffic sensitive streets, the different categories there. I won't go into the detail about that, but basically the 0 categories are like motorways, and the number 4 categories are the country lanes, effectively. Okay, next slide, please. So the limitations around the use of that funding, you can see there, which are basically around staff costs for processing applications, issuing the permits, and enforcing the rules to gain compliance and coordination activities. The DFT set permit fees. Do the next slide, please. So you can see here what the permit fees are, and again the split of the road category, the traffic sensitive type. The differences between permits which are immediate activities or standard activities, the costs there for major activities, clearly more for working on traffic sensitive roads. Okay, we'll move on to look at some of the IT software that's used. Here you can see basically the National Streetworks Register. That's what we use. The different authorities can use it in different ways. We use it by means of what they call direct user interface. So we use the system directly provided by the DFT. Some authorities have third-party software providers, so they'll use a bespoke different system which will link directly into Street Manager to use it by that means. I'll now try and just very quickly show you what Street Manager looks like. I can share my screen. So, can't see that coming up.
Wait.
Second.
You can see it now.
So can see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Street Manager is the bespoke system, which looks very much like many of the other government systems that you go into to make applications for things to do with vehicles or passports. It's a very corporate design. So we see here listed all the current permits that we have which are awaiting assessment. This moment in time, there's 116 that we have sat there in Devon which are awaiting staff to look at, assess, and whether they approve that or not. There's various options with that the permit can be refused. We can ask for modifications to be made to it, and that's what the staff are currently in the office doing at the moment. If we go back to the other bespoke system, which is the One Network. I'm not sure have I come off sharing now?
Yes. Yeah, you've come off sharing now.
Okay. Okay. So this is, you can see that? Is that up? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is One Network. So on this system, I think there's a QR code on the slide, which we'll put back up in a moment so that you can download. But this is a system which is accessible to the public. It's public facing. The authorities that use it clearly use it in a way which probably is more than general public, so we have to actually put information onto it. But what you see here, this is a section in North Devon. So the red lines, you can see where there is a road closure. So the information comes up and can highlight here what the closure is, duration. We can drill down further and further into that. But if you just put the cursor there, you can see there that the blue line, the blue dotted line, is a diversion route for this closure down here. And again, with this closure here, the blue line goes into shadow. That's the diversion route for that closure. We can drill down and drill down and drill down and find out more and more and more information. You can set up, if you log in, create an account, you can set up alerts so that in the area you live, it will send you an alert when there's a road closure or when some works are taking place. Okay. That's it.
Yeah. Do you want the slides back now?
Slide back up, yeah, if you could. So there, I think, yes, there's a QR code there for One Network, so that anyone can obviously download it from there. But it is a public-facing system, and much information is available on it. Okay, thank you. That sums up my element of the presentation.
Hi, can you hear me okay? Yep. Brilliant. Good morning or good afternoon now, everybody. I just introduced myself, Ray Harfron, Contracts Manager for South West Water. So I've got one slide to go through. I'll try and keep it on that, but really, hopefully from that, it'll anchor some confidence about what we do, how we play our part, but fundamentally give you the opportunities, key stakeholders, to ask any questions, particularly of South West Water, who will be a main user of occupying the highway and the impact that it may cause to constituents. If you could put the slide on, please. So really from South West Water's point of view, we're just about to start, and we have started a significant investment cycle in the Southwest, which will include the Isles of Scilly. We are throwing roughly about £2.6 billion worth of investment into the Southwest area across clean and waste and its various guises. And what that really means is overall, we're probably across the next 5 years going to be the single biggest statutory undertaker investing in the Southwest footprint. So therefore, by default, we're going to have a huge part to play on the pressure that will be applied onto Richard's team and to Devon County Council around our intentions to, where needed, occupy the highway for periods of time to upgrade critical infrastructure as part of across the Devon community. So we understand that Devon County Highways have got a commitment, and part of that real key commitment is to free up the highway as quick as possible, and then singly when we are on there, is get us off there as quick as possible, and when we are on there, holding us to account for our compliance and our performance, which is quite right, and so they should. So what am I saying in that message really? What I'm trying to translate across is, as South West Water do understand the part to play linked to highways, we see Devon County Council and the operational team as a colleague that works alongside us and supports us, but equally, and quite rightly so, is an enforcement body that holds us to account around compliance, operational practice, and how it is we go about doing our business, and we really appreciate the part they play, and Richard's team specifically, in holding us to account for what we do when you look at the number of permits that we intend to apply and do apply across the area. So what are we saying to yourselves as part of that key commitment as our part to play? So we've taken kind of best practice across the Pennon group, that's taken learning from other areas where we provide water services and waste services, and we will looked at across our business. And what we've done is we've brought together a single dedicated streetworks team for the business. So there's a single point of contact for anybody that wants to put a notice in through South West Water. You have to come through a dedicated team. That dedicated team have got good cross relations with the Devon County team, and that enables good dialogue between both organisations, both tactically and strategically, to make sure that we are doing our part and we're responding to particularly challenges that you may be getting as a net result of activity that we're doing. So that's the main component part of that dedicated team there. It also gives us the ability to have a single point of contact 24/7 between both of our statutory control rooms. So again, we do work 24/7, as I'm sure you know as councillor. We're out there working 24/7, and we make sure that we engage with our control room, who in turn should be engaging with your control room. Particularly, nothing more frustrating when we're trying to get kids to school in the morning, school buses, etc. And lo and behold, South West Water's been up at 2 in the morning and closed a key road. It's really, really frustrating for parents. It's really frustrating for kids trying to get to education. So we understand that, and we try and do everything we can to try and get ahead of that communication using the various platforms that we've got collectively available to notify that. We've engaged and invested in the One Network utilisation, so it's a significant investment, ongoing investment from South West Water, and that allows us to open that platform up to our wider business, to take the pressure ideally off the permitting team, who get it from all statutory undertaker as well as private bodies. So the idea for that is we've paid a higher level of permit, a license condition, and what that enables our teams to do is look ahead. And what's the benefit of looking ahead? The benefit for us to look ahead is we can already see who piece of the highway, where and when. And that tries to allow us to try and work in the spirit that we should be trying to do from a HOC and joint utilities point of view, to avoid noticing where we know we're going to class, because it's unnecessary work for the permitting team, because they'd be quite right to reject it. But it gives us the opportunity to also look at how we can work together with National Grid, British Rail, different organisations that are doing different things out there to try and see if we can coordinate our work and activity. So, for example, just recently there's been a road closure in Clumpton. As part of that work, we have a quick horizon scan. Are there any significant leaks, meter options, new connections on the horizon that might be worthwhile to try and see if we can talk to Wales and West Utilities and get in there at the same time, so that the residents aren't then, as soon as one utility company leaves, lo and behold, 2 weeks later another utility company comes in. We understand that is really frustrating. So link up to what we said at the top there, we're a big investment in the next 5 years in South West. And how are we going to go about doing that? One of the key things we've done is we've introduced a collective sort of engineering cell under the umbrella called Amplify. And Amplify is a shared leadership team under an overall South West Water director that is bringing all of our capital programme delivery into one umbrella. And the idea of that is to make sure that we are coordinated and looking ahead, particularly where we may be occupying or intending to occupy some strategic roads across the Southwest, to try and understand our part to play, really getting about Devon back on its front foot, recovering from COVID, and some of the wider impacts about when they generate huge amounts of revenue during the summer, that gives them the safeguard for protecting the businesses during the winter. So we really understand that part to play, and as part of that, what we've done is we've brought that collective area into one space, and that allows us to try and share that programme at these HOC meetings and these JAG meetings about where we intend to be when, and we can try and adjust programmes accordingly. As well as that programme visibility, as Richard alluded to, we are regularly meeting with our team, and we regularly have a performance review meeting where we look at the good and the bad and the opportunities to improve. And that's where myself attends that on behalf of South West Water, as the role that I've indicated earlier. And we sit down and we look through the things we've just indicated. What have we got right? What have we got wrong? Where are the opportunities to improve? What key actions have we taken away? So, for example, we've been challenged by Devon County around our compliance where we man streetlights. Do we have a man just sat in the van, watching Netflix while you got traffic queuing up? We need to prove that that's not the case. But that's the feedback. So we can't ignore it. We need to be seen to be doing something about it. So, for example, we'd get that challenge from Richard's team. We'd take that on board. We'd go out and have a look at how we can audit compliance with that ourselves and see what kind of key finding we find. And then if there are improvements to be made, then we'll implement them improvements with our own internal labour or our own statutory suppliers. Taking that sort of translation into contracts, which is really my space, coming back to that key message, our part to play, we've put a significant investment into our speed of response and our speed of repair plan over the last 6 years. So we've introduced what we call a hybrid model. That is a significant number of gangs that now work over a shift pattern. And it allows us to have an enhanced response mechanism to emergency repairs. So what you were asking earlier, Samantha, our SLA with our key supplier is if we have an emergency repair, our SLA is to be on site within 2 hours, 24/7. And that includes Christmas Day, Easter Sundays, all them good times when other people are quite rightly enjoying themselves. We make sure that we can respond. And they're targeted to repair that catastrophic failure ideally within 8 hours. So that gives us a sort of end-to-end window. And obviously, you won't do all of them in that time, but that's a kind of baked-in contractual mechanism we're looking to put with our supply chain. As well as that, we're trying to repair where possible all leaks within sort of 2 to 4 days. So again, if it's causing highway damage, then we would categorise that as a P1. We do not want to have leaks out there or burst mains that it may not be causing customers no water, but if we genuinely believe it's causing undermining damage to the highway, then we want to get on that as quick as possible, because what we will be challenged on, and quite rightly so, is the associated road damage from the asset failure that we've had. And we've also baked into some of our SLAs, once the repair is complete, targeting to clear site within 2 working days on average. So we routinely monitor that with our supply chain. As soon as they timestamp something that they've done the repair, on average, we're trying to make sure that we are site clear. So that's backfilled, reinstated, all the traffic management removed, and where applicable, a road sweeper put through the road within on average 2 working days. And relatively speaking, we're not a million miles away from that measure, but it's an average, and we know that there's particularly work to do in some hotspot locations, which again, we've been challenged by Richard's team on to focus and address. We'll be coming back to Richard with what we're going to do to try and recover that situation. So hopefully, from a South West Water point of view, you've taken away that we've got a huge amount of investment, which is positive, but we understand the impact that could create. We understand the responsibilities that come with that and the part to play from South West Water. We take that responsibility seriously. We'll try and do everything we can, or we will do everything we can to make sure that our supply chain are governed to work in a coordinated way. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to get everything right, because we won't. There'll be things that we will get wrong. But what I can tell you in 2 key components to that is you've got a really good, vigorous team in your sort of operational team, and they are really good at holding us to account. And I think it's fair to say that the relationship is there to have that conversation, both tactically and strategically, and the response mechanism from South West Water is there for the Devon County team to use at their advantage. So our commitment is that we will work hand in glove with the team on the call to make sure that we play our part. And just to give you the assurance and feedback from me on South West Water, they are doing a sterling job at holding us to account. And we've got more to do in our area to make their life easier in terms of processing permits and getting clear, particularly on strategic roads when residents and customers see traffic management out there with no one working. There's nothing more frustrating, so we fully understand that. I'll park it there, a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I'm open to any questions either now or at the end. I'm happy to stay on.
Thanks, Ray. I think we'll do some questions for DCC officers at the end, but if you want to sort of sign off for now, we can always refer something to you later if that's all right. So that's great. Okay, thanks for that, Ray. Appreciate that. So I think just going to move on to Karen, and I think it's got some help from Roxanne from Wales and West, just to sort of talk around a bit of a case study that we from Newton Abbot. And I say this is something that's replicated across the county. We just thought it'd be good just to sort of channel it in and just give an idea of what's happened in one particular area. So over to you, Karen.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Robson. I'm the Network Coordination Supervisor for Teambridge and South Hams. Now, when Wales and West approached us with the major scheme that was happening down in Newton Abbot, they were very good in actually submitting forward plans so we could see where and what roads were being impacted. So briefly, I took a overview as to how busy that Newton Abbot is, and the fact that you do just have basically one road into, or you have about 6 main roads coming into Newton Abbot, but I'm very mindful that if you have any high impact on one of those roads, then this actually affects all the others around. So Obviously, just to give you a little bit of background, I used to live in King Stainton, so that's why I know it is how bad it can get. So when it came to programming the whole various roads and the various locations, my first question would be to ask about like the traffic management that was being involved. Was it road closures? Was it traffic lights? Road closures are more impactful to the public, whereas traffic lights, yes, there's a wait, however. So obviously you just always coordinating between other works, because obviously this is just purely Wales and West works. But for my team, we ended up putting an embargo in and around, as what you can see on that map there. So if any works took place or wanted to take place within that Newton Abbot area, it had to come past myself first. If it was just something like some carriageway incursion, we would let that carry on, because obviously utilities need to get on with their works as well and replace any services for the members of public. However, if it was something more planned and more impactful to the team or to the residents, then obviously we would have to do some sort of stacking order between the dates that Wales and West were planning to go in compared to the dates and the times that another utility would want to come in. Next slide, please. So I don't know if Roxanne is on the call.
I am finally on the call, yeah. Sorry, I did have a little bit of difficulty joining, and then I didn't have Zoom, so I had to quickly download Zoom, but I'm here now, yeah. So very similar to what I caught the back end of Southwest Water, but we're coming to the last year of our 5-year period, and following this 5-year off-jam budget that we have, we will be going into a 6-year window, but this is just like with these high profile projects, we treat them on a case-by-case basis. So the example that we've chosen to give you today is regarding Newton Abbot, and as Karen has said, we had a number of projects to be done in Newton Abbot that impacted on a number of schemes that Karen was also aware that was going or up and coming in the area. So it was about us phasing our jobs so that they weren't collaboratively working at the same time, because there would have been too much disruption on traffic. So me and Karen spoke nearly every week about having various different Teams calls to make sure that everyone was aware of what was going on, the order in which they were rolling, and then we then take that forward to the town council, local schools, and just have those conversations to make sure that they understand what's happening and any effect on school bus services or the local bus services. Everyone is kind of involved in those Teams calls then to make sure that we've ironed out any problems before the project starts, basically. So obviously our directive of our company is replacing the gas mains in the ground to make sure they're ready, hopefully one day, for hydrogen, who knows, but that is what we're working towards at the moment. So our high profile projects, we label them as if we're working in an area for a long amount of time, if they're predominantly by a school, if they're on a main road, by any large organisation or large population building, we then label it as a high profile project and work closely with Karen and the rest of the team to run through those projects.
Okay, next slide, please. So as I was saying, Wales and West managed to put on quite a few forward plan notifications. As Roxanne said, we had regular meetings.
So for this 5-year period, we know in advance of the pipes that we need to complete. So any pipe that had to be done within these 5 years, we kind of put into a year, and we're now in year 5. so the final year. But at the beginning of this regulatory period, we put advance warning and notices on the system, which Richard briefly touched on earlier, so that they can be considered for, you know, other utilities that might have works to do there, or like an example we've had this morning with resurfacing works, if there's any you know, cost to be spent on upgrading that road, we proactively put our permits on so that they can be looked at to avoid situations where roads are being resurfaced prior to us completing our works, because we would obviously have to then disrupt that service. So that is the gist really for given forward plan notifications. We then go through the phasing of a project. So we will put the traffic management into phases. So we would then cascade that presentation through to Karen and the town council and schools, and we would then provide a newsletter to the local town council, where we basically just ring the area and send that newsletter out to everyone in the town so that they've got those key dates as well, which is exactly what we did for this scheme, wasn't it? But we had a number of challenges that I can see Karen has listed, like the pedestrianisation of Queen Street, the Fortress Cross works, other utilities that wanted to go in there, and I believe at the time as well, there was a whole change with the town council that we had. Karen wasn't there, where the town clerk, I think, resigned, and then they decided not to replace. So there's not actually like a town person in that specific area. So it was quite difficult to continue to get the message out there. But it worked, and we're at the end of that programme now, and we've just got a small 5-day notice for traffic lights to do, Karen, but I think that's it for Newton Abbot now.
Okay, next slide, please. So obviously, as Richard Price has touched on already, this was the consultation that obviously we required from Roxanne when she submitted through her permits. Next slide, please. And that's just like re-emphasizing exactly what Roxanne was saying. And also, when we was aware of issues like a memorial parade or Christmas shopping, we also discussed it with Roxanne and the Wales and West team to see whether they could either pull in their roadworks or at least maintain some form of access. Next slide, please. So this is where, as a general view, as what we do is we go to our Devon County Council media and issue out a press release. We also try to put as many advance warning signs out on the highway, just to make it obvious for the local residents that these works are taking place on the allocated days. Roxanne also produced these the flyers as to the overall program that she was mentioning, and like Roxanne was saying about like the presentation, we did that in-house embargo around Newton Abbot, and we was quite adamant to tell and say that only the one road closure would be in place at any one time, and then we would also consider the impact on adjoining roads. So next slide, please. These are just some examples. Next slide. That was the flyer that Wales and West sent out to all the residents, and the newsletter. Next slide, please. That was the embargo that we had in place around Newton Abbot. Next slide. An example letter that Wales and West send out to everybody. Next slide. And then what went wrong? So the things that were out of our control was we had drivers misreading our road signs and not understanding our road signs. We had the ASDA HGV driving up through Powderham Road. We had coaches turning up towards the police station, but then couldn't turn around in that area. We also had another utility that had a burst water main, no offense, Ray, on the down towards the Pennine roundabout, which then also impacted onto the Wales and West works. So again, we're also mindful of other utilities. And then if there's a road traffic incident, then obviously we have to liaise with the utilities to see if we can either postpone or, like say, with bring in some of the barriers to make it accessible for other members of public to carry on their journey. Next slide, please. So again, it's just re-emphasizing about our key main aims are keeping that expeditious movement of traffic. However, the utilities being able to deliver their services, but then at the same time also keeping the members of public consulted and informed and keeping the public happy. That's the end of our presentation.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Roxanne. Appreciate that. Really good. If we just move on to the next slide very briefly, Rebecca, I've just got Andy, who's the network enforcement supervisor. He's going to do a short piece towards the end now, just of sort of the end part, the enforcement element, and how we just keep track of everything. So, Andy, over to you.
Thank you. I'll be as quick as I can on this. So, if we could just move on to the next slide. So, there are 8 enforcement officers that cover Devon. So, as it was said earlier, 8,250 miles of road. Divide that by 8. That's a lot of miles that each of the officers have got to cover. So, the areas, the Devon is split into 6 areas, and then we have 2 other officers that undertake other roles within Devon. Quite a lot of the work that we actually do as a team is planning of works. So whilst the other teams were talking about the coordination of works, we look at the planning of work. So how are the works going to be undertaken? Does the road have to be dug up? Could it go into the verge? Could it go into private? There are other ways of undertaking street works. So this is what we were looking at way in advance of the works actually taking place for planned works. Just looking at a couple of other bits, undertaking statutory inspections and coring. So we do quite a lot of coring where we drill holes in statutory undertakers' reinstatements to make sure they're compliant, which at the end of the day, we want to protect the asset and we want to make sure that the network is safe for all users as well. So next slide, please. So in 24-25, we actually as a team undertook 6,480 inspections. So this is looking at live site works, and this is also looking at reinstatements or anything that's actually taking place on the network. So it's quite a high number of actual inspections that we did actually undertake. Section A1s, that is what's otherwise known as duty to maintain apparatus. So this is statutory undertakers' frames and covers that are in our network. So we came across 1,097 defective ones. So we issued all of those to the statutory undertakers to make sure we come and fix them. When we account problems on the network, so we've got fixed penalty notices, FPNs there, 730 of those. So this is where the statutory undertaker is fined for not behaving themselves. This could be from very different issues, from not registering reinstatements. It could be from not manually controlling lights. There's various different reasons why the FPNs can be issued. Section 74s, so that is where a utility is overrun. So we had 136 offences of that throughout Devon last year. So they give us a date that they're going to finish or wish to finish. However, they over and above the agreed time. So reinstatements cord, 408. So it's quite a lot of reinstatements that we undertook and tested. So we have our own lab and we analysed and tested those cores that we undertook, and there was a 76% compliance rate overall. Next slide, please. So when something goes wrong, we have the fixed penalty notice, which we issue for minor offences. However, as you can imagine, if you issue a lot of fixed penalty notices and we're still not getting a result that we want, what we can do is we can actually prosecute as an authority. So why would we want to prosecute? So majority of the time we would undertake it for public safety risks, multiple offences. Were they all similar? Are they in the public interest? So also, have we exhausted all other avenues? Right. So we're just going to go on to an example now. So next slide, please. So this was an offence that we prosecuted for in 2024. As you can see, this is actually in Exmouth. So this was on a traffic sensitive bus route. And this site was left like this over the weekend. You can see on the right-hand side that they were actually footway boards with a maximum of 3.5 ton weight limit. And you can see that they obviously didn't survive the bus route. Next slide, please. So this was a company called Next Fiber undertaking some works. So in total, we gained 8 offences. We submitted them for our legal team for prosecution. So Next Fiber, they pleaded guilty to all offences. So the top offence was the one we've just seen there. It was £8,000 fine for them. So in total, Next Fiber will find almost £30,000 for all the offences that we gathered together. We were awarded all of our costs, and probably in total it took way over 100 hours spent by my team to actually build this case together to get it to legal. With also 7 witness statements taken. So these were from stagecoach drivers, from our control room, from also the officers that had to go and attend and go and close that road at the weekend because it was unsafe to leave it open. So we had gone through our test, as it were, to find out whether we should or shouldn't prosecute. But because of the sheer amount of offences and because of the fact we had exhausted all avenues and this definitely was in the public interest, we decided to prosecute. So we are a prosecuting authority. We don't do it all the time, but we do it when we've exhausted all other avenues. I think that's probably a very quick whistle-stop tour of enforcement.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that. Rebecca will just pop onto the final slide there for us. That'd be great. So hopefully that's given everyone a good idea of sort of the complexity of roadworks and how the sort of various promoters, how they're coordinated, the notifications required, and how we work very closely with those promoters to try and get the best deal for the residents and keep that traffic flowing as best as we possibly can, even with sort of significant challenges that it poses. Information is a key part of all of this, making sure everyone's given the right information, the right sort of levels of communication. So just posted on this page a couple of QR links and a couple of website links really. So first one is to our main Roadworks page. And within that, there's a few access to sort of maps and plans about planned and future roadworks, which sort of Devon promotes, and also some external as well. The second one is a bit more detail around work types and coordination. So you've heard a lot of detail here, but there's also some wording in there that can be useful to refer to at a later date. And also the link to one network as was described by Richard Price earlier. What's not in here is our reported problem pages, and I think Richard has put a link to that in the chat already. And that's a useful link to report any issues that people encounter on the network, which, for whatever reason you feel we need to be aware of that. And so we've only got 8 officers that sort of cover the network. It's handy to have that information, that intelligence that we can direct our resources towards. And the other thing, which I'll probably put in very shortly, is a link to our WhatsApp channel. So I think some people are probably aware of the Devon Alert sort of Facebook pages and sort of social media pages, which we update quite regularly with any sort of network issues. We also have a WhatsApp channel as well, which people can sign up to, and that'll get some instant information around any sort of particular issues on the network, not necessarily related to roadworks, but can be if there's emergency roadworks happening on the network, especially in traffic sensitive areas and that sort of thing. So hopefully that's given people some good information, and I think we're probably at a point now where we can take some questions for the DCC officers. Sorry, Rebecca, I think you're on
sorry,
mute.
yeah, I am. Sorry. Yeah, just stopping sharing there. And yeah, thank you very much to the Highways team there. So we'll move on to questions. I've been keeping an eye on the chat, but it rather looks like the team have actually been answering all the questions that have been coming in on the chat. So but obviously, if anyone else has any questions, do pop them in there. But I do see we've got a hand up from Paul Hayward.
All right, thanks, Rebecca.
Hi, Paul.
Hiya. Hello, everyone. Two questions. One for Richard, who I believe was the representative of Southwest Water. Is he still with us, or has he disappeared?
I think Ray's left the meeting.
Ray, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If we could
So
just keep it to
the-
DCC officers for
Yeah.
now, that'd be great. Thanks.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose the question there is the irritation that clerks have when there are roadworks put out, nothing happens, and we're told to contact Southwest Water by ringing the number on the board. And after 2 hours, we give up because they don't answer. So, you know, clerks get the brunt, and council staff get the brunt of the calls in our local communities. So if Southwest Water are going to put signs out, can there be some sort of SLA that they're actually going to answer it? Because it really is unhelpful when we don't have any recourse to know how long it's going to be there, how long the signs are out for, when work will start. And in any community, and you know, all the officers here, you must get as irritated by roadworks as we do. To see nothing happening for 3 days is just not on. You know, and there should be some pushback from Devon to say, if you're not doing it, then take your signs away, and you know, we'll do it. And I appreciate you have an obligation to let them do the works, but there needs to be some mechanism to actually chewy things along.
Yeah.
That's the first question. The second one is, I think it was touched on in the chat about abandoned signs. I did a Lantra course a while ago, and I understand that local authorities, highways authorities, can fine contractors for leaving their signs out. And obviously there are lots of them, lots and lots of signs and metalwork, which is both dangerous and unsightly and a hazard to animals and such like. And it's a question of, is Devon fining utility companies? Because if we're not, then they'll keep doing it. And perhaps some fines and high profile cases might focus their attention in future. That's just, again, a suggestion, really. Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that one? So in answer to your question, yes, we do fine them. We need to know about them though. So it was put in the chat earlier about letting us know. Like I said earlier, there's 8 officers, each one with 1,000 miles of road. We can't spot every sign that's been left out. So please let us know if you find something out there. And what we would then have to do is work out beyond reasonable doubt that it is a sign related to those works. So if we came across a sign, for example, and we couldn't associate it with a statutory undertaker, we would just remove it. Right. But if we could associate it with a statutory undertaker, then yes, we can go down the fining route, and we do it quite a lot. So yeah, but please let us know, because we can't be everywhere at once.
If I can just circle back to the sort of query about the sort of on the phone to Southwest Water and the notification and the period of time for works. I think that's something we can certainly come back to Southwest Water on, and just raising those performance meetings with them. And again, it's also that bit about letting us know, I think sort of similar to what Andy was just saying, if we're aware of things were not happening on the network as they should do, we can direct Andy's resources to that as well, so we can actually communicate better with Southwest Water and get them acting quicker if something's not happening as it should be. So it's just about letting us know, and then we can also pick up those issues around, you know, waiting times and things with them in those performance meetings directly.
Okay, and Paul, can I just add to that as well, that we've talked about Southwest Water there. That's something we'd look to do with all statutory undertakers as well, and it's something we've had a focus on with our own works that go on through Devon Highways, where we found that there's been numbers on there where people haven't been able to reach anybody, you know, either not been able to reach them, or it's been a long time or so. So that's something we've addressed there as well, but it's something that is important, and we understand those frustrations. Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks like there's a hand up from William as well.
Hey there, thank you very much. I think probably my question's addressed to Richard Price. It relates to diversions. I have corresponded recently with the Highways Director and had a response from her PA. But three things really. The first is when a road is closed, we get road ahead closed signs put out, which in a way is helpful, but mostly is extremely unhelpful because it doesn't tell you where ahead you're going. And so if there's 3 or 4 turnings off along the way, before you get to the actual road closure, people are tending to stop before then and get lost in the local countryside. We are very rural and easy to get lost around. The second is when you get to the diversion, you're often sent off on a route which is going to meet up with various other diversions, and you've no idea which set of diversion signs you're following. So we recently had a 23.64 kilometre diversion for a 1 kilometre road closure, which made no sense locally. And even the biggest vehicles could go on much, much shorter diversion routes. But we had people in tears because they were going on the diversion, getting muddled with another diversion route, and getting totally lost, reverting to sat-nav and ending up where they started without having got around the diversion. So diversions are not intelligently implemented, and I think some more thought would be appreciated.
Yeah, okay. I think I drafted some of the response to go back on that because what you're saying does sound fairly familiar recently. Taking your first point, there is a requirement for diversion routes to have specific signing. So having road ahead closed signs that lead up to the point of where the closure is, that is where the road closed sign is placed. There is not a legal requirement for signs to be placed identifying precisely where the road is closed for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is that you could put on those signs that the road is closed at such a particular point, but anybody who isn't local wouldn't have a clue where that is. So the actual requirement for the signing is simply to have road ahead closed signs followed by a road closed sign at the closure point. And I think Andy Nix, the enforcement officer, probably comes across this quite frequently, but we do encourage where necessary, if it is a particularly long diversion, for black on yellow signs to go out, providing additional information if we're finding that it is causing some confusion. But that is at the discretion of the utility. So obviously there's an additional cost to them for providing those signs, for which there isn't really a legal requirement for them to do. In respect of the length of diversion routes, I think I explained in the correspondence, any road closed must have a like-for-like diversion. That diversion is what is legally required so that any traffic at all that would use the closed road can use the signed diversion route. That diversion route is not mandated. So if there are alternatives that people know, they can clearly use those if the vehicles they are driving can legally do so. So I think that puts the point. The diversion route that is signed is the one which is approved, and it's a like-for-like diversion, but that's not necessarily one that is mandated for all vehicles to use.
So like is somewhat subjective, given that we have most of our heavy traffic is local farm lorries, and to use an adjacent sort of 3 kilometre diversion or 1 kilometre closure would seem perfectly adequate for like. So a 23 kilometre diversion was illogical, irrational, and unnecessary. And I think whoever approved it didn't really think about the issue at all. They just looked at how can we avoid going over bridges and selected that route.
I don't know the route. I mean, the local highways officers look at the routes that are proposed, and will look at and decide whether or not the proposed route is appropriate. But clearly, any weight limits or width limits, whatever, need to be avoided on the diversion route. But without looking specifically at the route you're mentioning and taking that to the local highways officer and saying, why was this route not used? I mean, I'm sure they would have a reason, because they tend to know when roads are closed, which are the approved diversion routes for all vehicles to use.
Well, it'll be interesting to see when the next closure comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got about 8 minutes left. So I think Joan's got a query, and then there's at least another query in the chat. So I'll go to Joan first, and then. Hi, Joan.
Thank you. I mean, it's essentially expanding a bit on the query that I've put in the chat. We've just had absolute mayhem in Teignmouth with Wales and West Utilities digging up the triangle, the main town centre business area where there are loads of shops. And there seems to be some dispute as to why this happened at this time of year when it's at its busiest, and why dumper trucks and diggers were roaring about right in front of shops and pedestrians without any segregation. I know it's sort of been addressed, Karen, so I mean that there's quite a lot of that. But now apparently there are still guys down there, having been reassured by WWU that the work would stop, but there's still guys about in holes and dust. And I'm not trying to play a blame game, because clearly from what you and Roxanne said, the systems are in place to keep residents aware. Talk to local councillors. I'm assuming that's the Devon County Council should have been involved, and possibly something, presentation to the town council. It said blah, 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 blah. None of that ever happened. The beautiful little blue leaflet all about we are replacing your gas lines, as far as I'm aware, I've never seen that being given to anybody. And I'm just wondering how it can go so horribly wrong when you assure us that everything's there for it not to do that. And I wonder if, if you've got any comments on that, really.
Yeah, no problem at all, Joan. I can advise that the reason why Teignmouth was chosen to be done sort of like pre-summer was mainly because Wales and West had a deadline of December to actually replace the seed pipe. And then obviously because of we class the summer as July, August sort of time. So to get in now before all of that, we are conscious that you've got like the Easter holidays and the May Day bank holiday sort of weekends as well.
And then Whitsun.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we were aware, but it just seemed that obviously for Wales and West to hit their deadline as well before Christmas this year, it would have been better this time of year, like you say, rather than hitting Teignmouth in July, August time.
Yeah, I mean, I understand all of that, but I mean, if I had a deadline of December, there was September, October, November, which I know is not as good weather, but would have been much, much quieter than, lots of people. The weather's been brilliant, lots of people coming out, cafe culture, and the traders going absolutely ballistic because they are all very stretched at the moment, and they've got some really nice weather come along aside from this morning. And then there's dumper trucks roaring about and dust all over people's food, and they felt they had not been informed. They tried to blame it on the town council, because I'm a town councillor as well. And it does appear that there was an original letter of intent missed last August, but I do get a bit cross when with a lot of other councils as well, that they send you one letter, and if you don't answer to it, you don't get asked again. A reminder would be useful. We don't seem to have heard from you about this. Can you please ensure you get comments to us? Would have been useful, because that might have woken somebody up. The county councillor is also on Hattock, and I would have thought with road closures and things, he would have done something, but it's not unusual that information doesn't come down in that direction. So we've had some very, very upset people. And yet, if I listened to you this morning and didn't know that, I would have thought, oh, great, they really, and I understand, as I say, I'm really not going into a blame game here.
Oh, no, not.
But there has been a lot thrown our way as a town council. Why didn't you do this?
Yeah, I mean, that would be quite good to put it down on an email to me. And
I was going to say,
absolutely,
Karen.
One
so
of
we
our
could just,
officers,
sorry,
and one of our officers has been directly in touch with Roxanne, and we've managed to calm the waters a bit, shall we say. But as I say, they were assured by the local guy who's managing the job here. They pulled him back from wherever he was to sort it all out.
Okay.
And he assured us
Yeah.
there was going to be nobody about, and yet there are still people down there working, and they're saying, "Oh well, we're a different part."
Yeah.
of
Okay, Joan.
Wales and West."
Joan, do you want to put it in the
Yeah, I think it's really useful, the feedback on there. And I think what we need to do is just maybe take this offline with you and talk a bit more, because there's some learning from that.
Absolutely,
which we want
yeah.
to make sure that
That's
we
all I'm
push forward
interested in.
across.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we
time for that.
appreciate the way you put
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
forward and everything. And yeah, so we'll be in touch separately from this meeting just to make sure we can capture that and learn from that and try and avoid this from happening in the future.
Brilliant.
Okay, thanks very
Excellent.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
Thanks, Joan. So we've got a couple of minutes left. Richard, do you think there's time for just one more, or there's just one in the chat, or not?
Yeah,
Because I know you guys have got a meeting.
Yeah, if you can pick one out from the chat, it should be able to do
Yeah.
that pretty quickly. Yeah, I'm not sure. There's a few comments rather than
There's a few
questions, so I'm not sure.
comments.
Maybe we just pick those up and just decipher them later potentially.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, because there's just someone asking about, should a property directly neighbours a roadwork site be notified of the works, because they can still access their property with cars, but deliveries can't get access, like oil and gas tankers. Or is that something just best if I put that in a query to you?
Yeah, should we pick that up sort of separately, and we'll sort of answer some of those if we.
That's fine.
Yeah, more directly. Okay.
I'm going to pop a feedback form in the chat, and that's going to have a bit of space. If anyone's got any further queries, if you can put them in there, I will pass them over to the team.
And I'm just going to pop our WhatsApp channel QR code in the chat as well. So if anybody wants to sign up to that Devon Alert WhatsApp channel, please do. It's quite a good way of keeping up to date with what's going on the network.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Okay. Well, thank you very much for today. I thought it was a really useful session, so thank you everyone for coming. So we do have 2 sessions coming up later in the year. I'm just going to very quickly bring those back on the screen. So that's Highways Investment Unveiled in September and All Things Traffic in November, and they'll be available to book on the website soon, so do keep an eye out for those, and we'll pop them in the e-bulletin as well. Okay.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can I just thank you very much for your time again, for organising, and everybody for giving up their time, officers and councillors as well for coming today. Anything that hasn't been answered, anything that we can find in the chat that needs a response, we'll make sure that's provided. And again, if anybody thinks of anything after and they've had time to digest what's been talked about, if you submit those questions to DALC, then we'll make sure a response is passed forward to you. Okay. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.